This is from a woman that hit the wall 5 years ago and is post-wall, crow's feet, sagging boobs, doesn't look anything like she used to, and she still is looking for Mr. Goodbody with a fat wallet.
Shut up and sit down.
Welcome back on my channel. Yeah, I didn't upload a video for a while, but I promise to you this video is gonna be absolute fantastic. So stick around, and you're probably more wondering why I'm talking in English right now and not in German. And that's due to the fact that I'm having a guest today, and my guest is Paul Elam. Welcome, Paul.
How you doing? Glad to be here.
How are you?
I'm good. I can't complain.
Glad to hear. Glad to hear. So, Paul, you are a men's rights activist, MRA, and probably the biggest advocate for men's issue. And since the MRA movement isn't quite large in Germany, could you please introduce us to A Voice for Men, since you are the founder, and why did you found it?
Sure, be happy to. I founded A Voice for Men 10 years ago. It was quite some time, actually. It took a while for the internet to catch up, but I had read Warren Farrell's The Myth of Male Power, and it changed my outlook on men, changed my perspectives on women drastically, and on the world around me. And I knew a long time knowing that there was something wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I knew that there was something wrong in the relations between men and women. And I knew it was inherently unfair to men, but I had no language to articulate that. And after reading Farrell's book, I did have a language to articulate that. And I started talking about this with professional peers and others. And I noticed the reaction I got was just incredibly hostile. To even talk about men's issues at all, the world around me reacted in a very hostile way. And so for me, that was a sure sign that we needed to talk about it more. If the world was so irate about this and raised so many objections, it must be a topic that needed more discussion. So I plodded around learning a little bit about internet, about website building, things like that. And eventually in 2009 came out with A Voice for Men, and started writing articles about different men's issues, everything from false allegations to child support, to conscription, to circumcision, there's a very, very broad range of issues that affect the lives of men. And I started writing articles about that. And I think probably more importantly, I started attacking feminism as an ideology of hate and as an ideology of lies. And that was when the major media came around, a lot of negative attention, many hit pieces on me, and we've been going ever since. So that's just in a nutshell the story of ABFM.
Glad to hear. You say people get hostile about it when men stand up and speak for themselves, when they speak about their issues. What are the reasons for that?
Well, that's a good question. Why do people become so hostile? And I think the answer is that discussing men's issues, talking about men in vulnerable terms, scares the living shit out of people. Human beings expect men to be society's protectors and providers. They expect us to do that with our mouths shut, without paying attention to our own vulnerabilities. We're expected to take risks for women. We're expected to lay down in traffic for women, to give our lives for them. And if you start questioning that, then you're questioning the very security that women have. And they're like, oh my God, well, if men aren't going to protect women, who will protect women? Because God knows we can't expect women to protect themselves. That's just unacceptable. But I think that's really at the core of all of it. And it's interesting because it's not just the core of the feminist reaction. They want chivalry in men. They just want it redefined in modern terms. But in traditional women, they want that chivalry. And when you start talking about men paying attention to their own pain, paying attention to their own lived experience, paying attention to their own problems, then like, oh my God, that's going to take away from women. So the whole world goes crazy when you start talking about men's issues. And that hasn't changed in the 10 years. A Voice for Men has not managed to fix that. But what we have managed to do is reach out to a lot of men and challenge them to rethink their lives and where their priorities are. And just maybe your priorities might be better placed than trying to please a woman.
Absolutely, I can't disagree on that point. But you mentioned that we can't expect women to protect themselves. Are there any reasons for that? Or, I mean, a normal feminist would not say that is complete misogynist, right?
Well, and keep in mind, I did say that sarcastically.
Okay.
It is, we don't want to expect women to protect themselves because women don't, as a rule, do not want to take responsibility. They want somebody taking care of things for them, not just provision and money and privilege, and protect them from anything bad that might happen in life. But however, you know, this is 2020. We have, in the United States, I know it's different in Germany, but in the United States, we have the right to bear arms. We have all kinds of weapons. Women can take care of themselves, and they should. It is just their disinclination to do that is part of the problem.
That makes absolutely sense. I can't disagree on that either. And we also spoke about people getting hostile. And we can't avoid the topic now, I'm sorry. But the last couple of days, you were quite active on Facebook and you got thousands of comments on your postings. And it was quite horrific. Some rape accusations were there and stuff like that. What happened there?
Oh, I disagreed with feminists, therefore I'm a rapist. That's how it works. No, I made a post, and you know, again, understand, feminists, you can play them like a cheap violin. They are just the easiest, most thin-skinned, easily provoked people in the world. You say something they don't like and they get very angry. If you say something about rape that they don't like, they get very, very angry. And what I said was that there was evidence, and there is research that bears this out, and of course every man knows this, that just because a woman says no in the typical sexual interaction between men and women, that doesn't mean necessarily that she really means no. She might mean maybe. She might mean no. She might mean yes. She may mean try harder. She might mean you need to ask me 4 or 5 times before we get down to this. And that's the reality of life. But in the feminist mind, if a woman says no, that's what she absolutely means. And if you question the reality of that, that means you're looking for an excuse to rape, which is utter and complete nonsense. I wasn't at all looking for an excuse to rape. Of course, like 99.9% of men don't rape anyway. But what we're talking about is whether or not women are direct communicators in the realm of sexuality, and they are not. They are indirect, nonverbal communicators. They often don't say what they mean. They often don't mean what they say. That is a reality. And when I put that out there on Facebook, apparently that got put somewhere on Reddit, and they flooded in like a horde of shrill basilisks ready to do battle, breathing fire. Oh my God, you're a rapist. Oh my Lord. And it was actually, and just so the feminists that see this, please know that I find this highly entertaining and somewhat arousing. It is quite wonderful to watch you guys just lose your shit over a little piece of reality like that. And so I'll say it again for the record, but no doesn't always mean no. I always advise men, you should take a no as a no. If she says no, man, this is not an age where you want to take one step further with that woman. That way, it gives the feminists what they want and it protects you. Because in that situation where a woman has said no once to sex, it is not her that's the most vulnerable. It's the man. He's the most at risk. And of course, feminists don't want us to talk about that either.
I mean, even if she says no, that's no, you never can be sure that she gonna regret it at one point in her life. And we all read such cases. and after a few years, she gonna make a rape accusation out of it, even if it's not true, and you as a man will go right into jail, right?
And even if you don't end up in jail, you end up convicted in the court of public opinion, because all a woman has to do is point a finger and say, I said no, and he didn't listen to me. And guys, also, I mean, you really need to be selective about who you have sex with anyway, because you don't even have to get past a no. A woman can say yes. A woman can jump on you, dry hump all over you, stick her tongue down your throat and beg you to screw her, and then still 2 or 3 years later come back and say that it was a rape. And the world will believe her. That's another reason that I founded A Voice for Men, is because this is the reality of men's lives. It's tragic, it's horrible, but it's what we have to live with.
I guess you could summarize the man living with a simple sentence that being man, being male, is nothing more than suffering in a modern society nowadays. At least that's my point of view.
I agree with that. I do think we have choices. One of the things you can do is you can free your mind. That's what I love about red pills, is that they provide an intellectual refuge for men. They don't have to trust women. They don't even have to like women. And and the world, all right, yeah, the world will call you a misogynist if you're honest about women's behavior, women's nature, and you talk about those things. The world will call you a misogynist. But to me, if you've taken enough red pills and ingested them properly, you don't care. Let them call you a misogynist. So what? Donald Trump gets called a misogynist all the time. He's president of the United States. You don't have to live by the edicts of these idiots.
That's quite true. I can't disagree on this point neither. And what we also read a lot when it comes down to feminism is the term patriarchy or tyrannical patriarchy. Is there even a patriarchy or tyrannical patriarchy? Are there some downsides of the patriarchy?
Yes, the patriarchy that puts women first on lifeboats when the ship goes down, and that doesn't conscript women into war, and that passes things like the Violence Against Women Act and rape shield laws and all other manner. And when you look at medical research that is gender-based, almost all of it is exclusively focused on women, very little men. There's your patriarchy. It's women's privilege. And feminists, because men are generally speaking too cowardly to argue with women, feminists can make any argument in the world. They can say medical research is almost all done on men. And then you can say, well, yeah, it is, for the same reason it's done more on rats than human beings, because we put men at risk to research medicines, and then women get the benefit. But, if that's patriarchy, man, we're doing this thing wrong.
That's true. But isn't it a bad thing to tell young people, young women, young men, then that there's a patriarchy?
Well, I think, well, sure, it's bad to insist that people live lies. There is obviously not a patriarchy, not in the sense that feminists describe patriarchy. There is a lineage issue where family names were traditionally passed down through the son, and land ownership was passed down through the male children. That did exist. And of course it made sense, since people often had to defend land with life and limb, and it was men out there defending it and protecting it. So for some crazy reason, they thought they got ownership of it. But yeah, it's wrong to teach lies to people. But one of the things that's, I think, good about feminist lies is they ultimately out themselves. Shakespeare said, truth will out. And the fact that patriarchy is a burden for men and a privilege for women, if it exists at all, that's how you describe it. And of course, feminists, by opening the door with this bullshit explanation of what they think patriarchy is, gives us the opportunity to argue back what it really is, which is, equality for women would be a step down.
That is absolutely true. And when we're talking about the tyrannical patriarchy, about a voice for men, what are your general thoughts about domestic violence, violence nowadays in the society?
I think some relationships are violent. They always have been. And I know that most of the research indicates that most violence in relationships is reciprocal. It's a matter of mutual combat. There was a CDC study, a Center for Disease Control study 10, 15 years ago, I think. But anyway, they concluded that 70% of non-reciprocal violence, of one-way violence, was perpetrated by women. And violence that goes two ways is about 50-50. So yeah, once again, we have the feminist version of domestic violence, which they describe as men's patriarchal privilege and influence in the home, that it's their proof of patriarchy is the evidence of domestic violence. And it's characterized by man-on-woman violence in which he's just exerting his patriarchal control. Well, if their model was correct, there wouldn't be any female domestic violence, but there's a lot of it. And it happens, and when in 99 cases out of 100, it is not severe injury. So if you're getting a fight and your spouse, your partner of either sex slaps you, hits you or whatever, all I can say is move. Go somewhere where you don't get hit. Take responsibility for your choices in your life and go take care of yourself. But to expect the government to come in with $600 billion worth of services to protect a woman who just can't help herself, and she marries one violent guy after another, or a man that does the same thing. I don't want to see a bunch of government resources poured into a human problem that can be fixed with one good decision on the part of the supposed victim.
I mean, I don't know the current numbers for the United States of America, but in Germany, we have about 400 shelters for women, and only seven or eight, but I guess it was 7 shelters for men. And we also have a Brightfield study that shows that 20% of victims of domestic violence are men. And when we're going into the dark field studies, it's more like 40% are victims are male.
Absolutely. So, and you're actually doing better than the United States, where Cassie Jaye documented in the Red Pill that we have 2,000 shelters for women and 1
for men.
For men. That's part of what got me into this many years back when I first started getting into this stuff about men and men's issues. Substance abuse program. And I had never asked any of my male clients if they had experienced domestic battery. And so I started asking, and matter of fact, that was our policy. We only asked women. We didn't even ask the men. And we did ask men if they were perpetrators. And we asked women if they were victims, but not the other way around. And I started asking my male clients, and a lot of them said, yeah. And I think it was the very first guy I asked had been crowned on the head with a fireplace poker, got 12 stitches across the top of his head while he was asleep. She bashed him over the head with a fireplace poker. And I tried to get him additional counseling for when he left his alcoholism treatment. And basically they laughed at me on the phone and said that they could put him in a batterer's program, that's all they had for men. And they were serious. They were saying this with a straight face. Yeah, we'll take him and he can go to our batterers classes. And I'm like, did you even hear me?
Did you even listen? Yeah, that's horrific.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we got a long way to go, and not much has changed since then. I mean, there's been one or two since Cassie Jaye did her movie. There was 1 or 2 shelters added. I think one in the Dallas area was constructed for men, but it's still incredibly lopsided.
Yeah, when it comes to domestic violence, I just saw a documentation on YouTube about domestic violence. It was probably the only German documentation which was about male victims. Mostly, if you look for that, only men are the perpetrators and women are the victims. And there was a really bad case. He had an injury on his head somehow, and the woman wouldn't stop to hit him on the head, so she will achieve the most damage she can do. And they also had a child, and she threatened him and saying, "I will kill our baby," and stuff like that. It's horrific. And then he went into a man's shelter, but he disappeared after a few months. And later he got back to the shelter and stated that he tried to kill himself, that he had suicidal thoughts. And I mean, how can we not see such problems, such issues in our society? That's horrific.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's a nightmare that's going on in every country across the planet, East and West. It's one of the, you know, we have a very few things that really connect us culturally between East and West. They're very different cultures, except for one thing: gynocentrism. That is exactly what connects us between East and West and all other cultures.
Well, when you're speaking about gynocentrism, are there some examples of daily gynocentrism that every man or every woman experiences?
Oh, sure. I mean, you'll find out if you get in a relationship, you'll find out very quickly about gynocentrism. Look at any dating app and look at the profiles of women on there. I want to be treated like a princess. I want a man who knows how to treat a woman. That translates to cha-ching, bring your wallet with you. I want a man with, you know, that makes at least $100,000 a year and has a 9-inch cock and is 6 foot 1 inch tall. He must be perfect. And this is from a woman that hit the wall 5 years ago, and is post-wall, crow's feet, sagging boobs, doesn't look anything like she used to, and she still is looking for Mr. Goodbody with a fat wallet. That is gynocentrism, and that is, man, I talk to men in my private practice all the time, and a lot of them have tried dating apps and are on them, and most of them give up because they say the pool of women out there is trash. It is absolutely trash. That is gynocentrism at play. Also, if a man talks about this, if a guy goes out there and says, you know what, the pool of dating women, they're a bunch of narcissists and they're very gynocentric, they think the world revolves around them, most men will attack them for saying that. That's gynocentrism too. Anytime you get in, you want to find gynocentrism in a society, start talking about men's issues, start talking about men's problems, start criticizing legitimate problems in women, which there are. You know, there's problems with both sexes. But if you talk honestly about the problems with men, well, everybody pats you on the back. Oh, you're a great guy. Yeah, good talk. And you say, well, women could stand to improve a little bit right here. Oh my God, you're a rapist. If you want to find gynocentrism, you will find it very easily. You find it in every shopping mall with 98% of floor space dedicated to women shopping. Why? Because women, even though they make less money than men, they spend nearly all the money. God, I could go on and on and on and on and on, but I think you get the picture of what I'm talking about.
I definitely get the picture, but when it comes to modern dating, I mean, I'm also on some dating groups on Facebook and stuff like that, and it's really horrific. The pool is really trash, and as you said, even a woman which hit divorced 10 years ago or something like that, they still get many attention, many hundreds of likes, hundreds of comments, and it's the same on every dating app like Tinder. But I think it's like a natural thing. If we betray or look at the natural courtship behavior, a man always needs to impress a woman, right? I guess we agree on that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're still expected to be the aggressive one, the one who initiates things. But if you initiate too aggressively, you're bad. If you don't initiate aggressively enough, you're weak. Men have an almost impossible situation. The dating pool today, I hate to put it in such gross terms, but it really is. You're like in an ocean of shit looking for a turd that's as bad as the others. That's what you've got to work with dating pools and with women in general, which is why I always suggest to men, you've really got to have values and standards and be willing, even when you're sexually attracted. And it's very difficult, especially for younger men, to say no to a woman that they're attracted to, especially if she has the promise of sex. That is one of the most challenging things in the world for men. And if they don't learn to overcome that, they can get into serious trouble in life these days. You must, as a young man, older man, whatever, have values. And the moment you see that a woman is dangerous or entitled or is ultimately going to make you miserable, then it's on you. You have to do something about that. She's not going to.
That's true. I mean, with the whole globalization, it got into a new dimension because women now get 24/7 attention, right? On Facebook, on social media, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram. And I think that's gonna have a long-term negative effect on the mental health of women, like some narcissistic behavior or something like that. Or
Oh yeah, well, find me a woman over 40 that's not on antidepressants right now. This does have a very significant impact on women's mental health. You can't treat somebody like a child in a candy store and say, here, you just go wild and you can have whatever you want. Nobody can say you no. That is going to produce a miserable human being before it's over with. And what do we see in all the research right now? Women are fucking miserable. They absolutely are miserable. And all they can do is continue this game, this recycled game of blaming men because they're not happy. And they're not happy because they've never been made to be adults. And that's a truth whether they want to hear it or not.
yeah, I mean, you mentioned that also in your last Facebook post, if I'm right there. But to go further, I guess that's gonna be a topic that most people are gonna hate. The topic is abortion, right? A very dangerous topic to approach. And feminists are proudly for abortion, but I think it's a really dangerous thing because we need to be certain, or we should acknowledge that it's a living being, right? And what I don't get, many feminists argue that it's only a clump of cells they are killing. And for me, that doesn't make sense.
Well, feminists argue that there's a patriarchy and that there's a rape culture, and they argue all kinds of things that are just fantasies. Obviously, if you want to use that kind of language, I'm just a clump of cells. That's what I am. I'm made up of cells all over my body. So are you. So are feminists, unfortunately. But so that argument just doesn't wash with me at all. Yes, abortion is a controversial topic. It always has been. I have differing opinions than probably most people on it. One, I disagree with abortion. I think abortions should not be happening, except in cases, there are medical cases and other circumstances where it's unfortunately a reality. But I also don't believe in criminalizing it. Some things like drugs, recreational drugs and things like that, we've tried forever to handle under a legal model, and it does more harm than good. So I would say I wouldn't criminalize it, not because I agree with abortion. I vehemently disagree with it, but I disagree with a criminal model to handle some social problems that happen. On the other hand, as long as abortion is legal, as long as a woman can unilaterally terminate a pregnancy during a specific period of time, I also believe that men should be able to terminate parental obligation during the same period of time. And yes, that means literally a woman comes to her boyfriend and says, I'm pregnant, is if she has the right to get an abortion and to end that pregnancy, he ought to be able to say right then, see ya, I'm out of here, your problem, not mine. And with a clear conscience, walk away. She has all the options of birth control beforehand. I mean, there's the medical research on birth control for women is astounding. The amount of options are astounding. Then she can terminate the pregnancy if she doesn't bother to use any of the multitude of birth control methods available to her. She can terminate the pregnancy, and she can have the child and not tell him about it. And then she can raise that child for 18 years and then get a lawyer and come back and to the guy and say, you owe me 18 years of child support. And if he doesn't pay all that money, he'll go to jail. Women have so much power around contraception. It's absolutely staggering. And I do believe that if we're going to have any kind of parity in the law, that men should be able to just say, I'm out. I didn't want to be a parent. Women say all the time that consenting to sex doesn't mean consenting to having a baby or being a mother. Well, guess what? Consenting to sex for men doesn't equate consenting to be a father. I don't think you should be able to have your cake and eat it too.
And I think it's also a huge problem for men because, as you mentioned, they don't have a say at all. And I also read some threads about that, and some men really wanted that child, that baby, but the woman aborted it. And they talked about drug abuse, alcohol abuse, about suicidal thoughts, that they're still thinking about that child or that baby, even if it's 30, 40 years ago. And to say that's only my body, my choice, that's no one doing anything good.
My body, my choices probably will go down as the most simple-minded slogan in human history. Absolute, my body, my choice. What is that even really saying? One, you're not even acknowledging that the baby has a body. Number two, your choice, how about your responsibility as well? And now the feminists want federal funding for all these abortions. It's
ridiculous.
That's another thing. Well, while I wouldn't criminalize abortion, my take would be, if you need an abortion and you want it, pay for it. Don't be a leech.
That makes absolute sense. But when we're talking about the feminism, I mean, there are also such terms like toxic masculinity, and it's in Germany you read that quite often, sadly, quite often. And I mean, is there even a toxic masculinity, or why don't we talk about toxic femininity or toxic humanity? Why only about toxic masculinity, and what is even toxic masculinity?
Well, one thing must be said, that standard femininity, the way femininity is embraced, is toxic in this culture. Normal femininity. When feminists say toxic masculinity, I think it just amazes me. I remember back when 9/11 happened, all those toxically masculine men running into the World Trade Center to try to rescue people before they came down. And of course, these little idiots that come up with these terms like toxic masculinity, the moment they get into trouble, like they turn into cute little girls who just need to be rescued. Not buying that. It's another one of their fantasies.
Like always, I mean, they mostly just have fantasies, at least in my eyes. I guess I will get a lot of negative attention for that, but I can live with that.
Yes, if you can live with that, there's the secret to red pill life, man. You just said it right there.
Sometimes it even enjoys me, so I can't wait for it. And I guess we have some equal data when it comes to single parenting. As we just talked about abortion in Germany, 80% of single parents are women. I guess for the USA, it's almost the same number, or?
Yeah, I think it's pretty close to those numbers. It's certainly a plague that's on us socially. It's one of the things that, interestingly enough, we talk about some in the men's movement, but even culturally, almost nothing is said about the amount of fatherless children that are filling our prisons and our gangs, street gangs, criminals, truancy, drug abuse, I mean, depression, suicide. You go down the long list of psychosocial factors that affect the lives of young people. All of them, they have proven, are aggravated by fatherlessness. And at the same time, we're out here culturally with feminists leading the way, singing the praises of single mothers as though they're some kind of heroes. No, they're leeches on the state that produce criminals that go out and harm other people. That's what single mothers are by and large. And I'm not faulting women if your husband dies or if you happen to be one of the women that really did marry a terrible, abusive asshole and you had to get him out of the life, I get that. But almost all the time, we're not talking about either one of those cases. We're talking about bitter divorced women who want to continue to punish the father by pushing him out of the life of the child, and they end up raising criminals and leeches in the process. And it should be a criminal offense. PA, parental alienation, should be punished criminally.
I agree on that part. And when we're talking about that topic, I mean, there's also something we need to consider, as we talked about before, the right of sexual self-determination. I mean, there are enough possibilities to women to avoid a pregnancy if they don't want it. So that's something we need to count in as well when it comes to that stuff, because I also heard stories that they just had sex or intercourse, and the man made see ya, went away, and there was the child. So,
well, yeah, and women could also, in addition to birth control pills, IUDs, contraceptive foams, implants, all the options they have, there's one other one too. It's called keeping your legs together. That's a great option for birth control. Women love to tell men, and feminists say it all the time, guys, if you kept your pants zipped up, you wouldn't have your problem. Well, ladies, guess what? You can keep your legs closed. You can quit being a slut, and it will avoid complications down the road. Just saying.
man, I love your wording. I can't deny that. I hope I won't get in any trouble with YouTube. I guess maybe I have to put some dolphin sounds over those insults. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Wasn't the best joke. I admit that. So, and when we're talking about women, can women even truly love men, or simply the things they men provide to them?
Well, I got to say, this comes up a lot in the manosphere, and I see it a lot in my comments. And I got to tell you, I don't buy it. I'm in an 18-year relationship with a woman that I know loves me. I mean, if you could be, a woman would have to love me to stay with me for 18 years, because the way I'm talking to you now, I talk to her the same way. And she has stood behind me through all this shit. And some guys will say unicorn, yeah, whatever. I don't believe it was unicorn. I believe what happened was that I developed some real values and real boundaries with women. And I went through a bunch of people, the one I'm with now. And the moment they started throwing shit tests, the moment that they started acting with privilege, bye, out, I'm done, don't need you. And it was a hard thing to learn. But the more I did that, the more secure I became in what my boundaries were, the more I attracted a better class of woman. And so, yeah, women can love. Of course, that's nonsense, man. It's guys that say, or what they're saying is women don't even love their children. Of course, my mother loved me. Sisters loved their brothers. My mother and father were married for 43 years until the day he died. And they held hands still everywhere they went. They were a very loving couple. It's just not so, in my opinion. I know that the experience of a lot of men has been that women don't love them, that women use them, and because there's a ton of women out there to do that. But I go back to the personal accountability model, is that, yes, there are women like that. You've got to screen them out, but don't play powerless. Don't play victim in this. You can screen out shitty women. You really can. You can get rid of them. And if that's who you are as a man, you will eventually attract a better class of woman. And of course, I know guys, some guys in the MGTOW community scream about this. They don't like my saying it. I don't care what feminists think, and I don't care what some MGTOW think either. I just tell my truth the way I see it, and that is my experience. Women can love, just not as many of them as we would like.
That's true. I can't deny that. But I think even when it comes to the MGTOW movement or philosophy, however you want to name it, men are sometimes really also hostile, I need to admit. I mean, we saw it with Cassie Jaye. She wasn't that welcome in the MGTOW movement as well, just as an example for that, even if she did some great work. But I think many men of the MGTOW philosophy are also only deeply hurt. I
Yes,
think that,
and they come to where they are, honestly. These are guys that have been pulling knives out of their back and have had their lives wrecked and destroyed. You know, when I say I don't agree with those guys, it isn't that I don't sympathize with them. I certainly do. And I had a lot of them. When Cassie Jaye first contacted me about making the red pill, and we were sort of talking back and forth, I published about this, that this was probably coming. And I had a whole stream of guys, don't do it, it's a setup. And look, I understand that mentality. And I thought probably, yeah, probably is a setup. And so I went in doing the red pill movie thinking, well, all right, it's probably a hit job, but it's a hit job that'll get a voice for men all over the place. And eventually that leads to more faithful subscribers. So I was willing to take that risk. Well, it turned out Cassie Jaye ended up eating a couple of red pills of her own while she was making the movie. Oh, we froze there for a second.
yeah, you too, I guess.
Oh, yeah, it's fine. Let's give it a second to stabilize, and
Okay.
I can edit that out before I send it to you.
Okay, perfect.
But at any rate, there were plenty of guys telling me that don't trust Cassie Jaye, and I understand why they felt that way. It turned out that Cassie Jaye had an awakening during the movie, and she turned out making a great project. And she's also serving as evidence. And of course, I saw guys coming even after the red pill was out. I saw one comment on her talk on YouTube. Some guy said, I bet she'd still fuck her husband over. Some guys are die hard with that stuff. It's like, okay, forget the movie, forget all the good it did, forget all the feminists with their hair on fire over it and how they went crazy. Cassie Jaye may screw her husband over, so don't trust her. Okay. All right, guy, I'll give you that.
Stick to that if you want to.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned shit tests. What is a shit test in your eyes, and what is a regular shit test women do on men?
A shit test is just a barrier that woman puts in your way. And the purpose of it, even though usually women are unconscious of all their motivations behind it, because it's so automatic, but they put it in your way to determine if you have strength enough to be in charge of yourself in a relationship. And what it determines is how she's going to treat you. If you pass the shit test, if she gives you a shit test and you, oh, I'm sorry, and you're of course right, she may stay with you a little while, but she will never have respect for you. She'll walk you like a dog. And if you reject the shit test and throw it right back in her face, she will either leave or she will stay and learn how to behave.
That's true. That's true. But are there some examples of mostly daily happening shit tests of women that we can see in society when we're just walking on the streets? Are there some shit tests when it comes to that, or is it mostly in relationships?
I think it's mostly in, well, look at it this way. Feminism itself is one big shit test. And almost all men have failed at dealing with it. That's a great example. Feminism, provoking men. You're bad, you're this, you're that. This is what men hear in relationships. If you loved me, you would do this or that. If you love me enough. Always this emotional blackmail. These are all shit tests, and that makes feminism a shit test. And so what men get is, well, if you love me, you would buy me a nice ring. Well, and so the guy takes his shame to the jewelry store, and he spends money getting manipulated that way. And then the woman walks him like a dog from that point on. And here, let me explain a little something here about shit tests. And this is something I get into in my book.
Yeah.
Is that at some point in every relationship with a woman, you have this first stage of infatuation. Nothing either of you can do is wrong. You can't wait to get the door closed to have sex. It's just beautiful, wonderful. And then one day, usually at about 90 days into the relationship, sometimes I give it a 90-day average, you will see her and something will be not quite right. She will be a little distant, a little put off with something. And you'll ask her, you'll be a moron, and you'll ask her, what's wrong? And she will tell you something that you did last week that she didn't like, something that you didn't do last week that she didn't like, that something you were supposed to do and didn't understand you were supposed to, and she didn't like that. And guys, how you handle that first critical moment in that relationship will determine exactly what's going to happen from that point forward. The appropriate response is for you to think about what she said. And if you actually did something wrong that is a violation of your own values, you got to own it. But if you know what she's saying is bullshit, which 99% of the time it is, she's just testing you. What you do is you call her on the bullshit.
That sounds like a good plan.
And you invite her to approach the relationship again when she can be a grown-up.
That can take a while. That can take a while.
Oh, yes. Matt, shoot. I said I've been in a relationship for 18 years. I didn't say it was all smooth all the time. This is part of being female. This is what they do. You should have done this or you should have done that. It's childish. It's their nature. It's the way they are. And I understand MGTOW, some guys don't do relationships, not that they couldn't overcome the shit test, but they don't want to bother. And that's perfectly sane in my book. I felt like it was worth it for me to overcome that stuff. And I can happily tell you that in 18 years, that's the shit test. I have joyously failed all of them.
But afterwards, you're always smarter, so, right?
I'm sorry?
But afterwards, you are always smarter, so you can do better. I guess every man needs that first experience with a shit test, and from there on, he can build up.
Oh, absolutely. This just the key is don't try to pass it. Don't try to satisfy her. I mean, of course, we're assuming that we're talking about men who can look at themselves and discern whether or not they've made mistakes. If you can't do that, this is a conversation wasted on you. But if you can do that and you can look and decide, look, this is just childish bullshit she's throwing up, then you need to tell her that you're being childish and I'm not going to feed into it.
That's absolutely true. Sorry. But you said you're in a long-term relationship. I can't talk anymore. Long-term relationship since 18 years. Would you recommend relationships towards young men or even to marry?
Don't get married. Don't
Never?
get married. Ever. Look, it's not about her. It's the state that's the problem. It's the family courts that are the problem. You know, I look at it this way. Marriage is a temporary arrangement. The woman is temporary. The state is forever. It will follow you the rest of your life and destroy you. There is no reason to get married. You don't have to marry somebody to live. There may be some countries in the world where you have to be, but not where either one of us are. You can live with somebody, you can love them, you can have a great relationship. It can last years and years and years. You don't have to marry them. But when you marry somebody, you are literally, the moment you get a license, you're bringing the state into your bedroom, into your relationship life. It's a stupid move. It's just purely stupid. Don't do it, ever, for any reason. No, I don't care what she wants. If she insists on marrying you, despite the fact that you sit there and tell her, look, here's the disadvantages for me. The state puts a loaded gun in your hand. Things are great now, but I don't know how they're going to be in 10 years. So, no, I'm not going to get married. If she doesn't accept that, let her go. let her go. But man, that is the one thing. If I had any particular advice to give to young men at all, do not get married, ever.
I would go even further and say that young men should stay to keep all young women away, or even general women. Just keep your safe distance and nothing can happen. And you're not losing anything. You will still enjoy your life. Just avoid women at all costs.
And even if you decide to have a relationship with a woman and cohabitate with her, check the law. You know something? Go spend a couple of $100 on an attorney to sit there and explain the law in your state where you live. What puts you at a disadvantage? Guys, it's pennies on the dollar. I mean, you spend $200 like it's nothing. Yet we get tight when it comes to paying for a lawyer to get some good advice. Get the lawyer. Tell them, what are my risks? If I live with her, will the state consider us married? How do I prevent the state from considering us married? This is an investment in your life. You need to do that.
That makes absolute sense. I can't disagree on that. But I'm seeing our time is running low, running out. Sorry. Just let's see. I still have so many questions, but I can't do anything when the time is running out. But I wanted to hear your opinion on another thing, and that was we already talked a bit about it. Feminism always betrays itself as something for equality. And
Yeah.
I mean, people still fall for that, right? And I just mentioned hashtags like kill all men are trash, angry white old man. That should be the clearest sign of proof that feminism isn't about equality after all, but still people are falling for that. And especially when men are falling for the feminism, I think they're mostly hoping for having intercourse with the woman there. Do you agree on that point, or?
Oh yeah, well, all of this is gynocentrism. Feminists can absolutely say feminism's about equality. And then the next breath, I hate all men. All men should die. All men are rapists. Castrate all men. The world's population of men should be 10%. So we need to kill off 90% of the men. I mean, and an average man in the blue pill world will look at all that and say, yeah, feminism's about equality. It is absolutely amazing. Never underestimate the power of gynocentrism to distort people's thinking. You think, you see an alcoholic with a distended stomach and bad liver, and he's still drinking and says he doesn't have a drinking problem. That is how society is with women. The level of denial is that much. It is very difficult. And guys see this. They see a woman say, I think we should kill all men. And the guy wants to get up on his white horse and defend her. And that's most men. I mean, if you're in a red pill audience, one thing I want you to consider is give yourself a pat on the back, because you are so much smarter, so much more aware, so much more conscious. You talk about being woke. Red pillers are only kind of woke that ever mattered. It is really being woke to things. But you can't call a guy woke because he gets on a white horse to defend a feminist who says she wants to kill him. If that is your version of woke, you've got a mental disorder.
But it happens all the time, even on daily basis, as we talked about that before, just as a last example of that. Even if a girl cheats on her boyfriend and posts on Facebook stuff like, oh, I feel so bad about it, there will always be a man who will tell her, hey, don't feel sorry, don't feel bad about it, we're just human beings after all. Everyone makes mistakes, and that's a huge danger, which will probably lead to some narcissistic behavior again. That's
absolutely.
So we can say white knights, as we call them, are as bad as feminists in general.
I think they're worst. They're worse.
Really?
At least feminism and women, female feminists are in some way, at least they have the illusion of acting in their own interest. there's nothing about being a white knight for feminists, a male feminist, that's anything but self-destructive. And most of it is born out of gynocentric uh, uh, mentality and a pathetic desire to be approved of by women. I mean, I feel so sorry for these guys. I really do, because they're absolutely pathetic human beings. How much do you have to hate yourself as a man to defend modern feminists?
That's
It's
true.
very sad.
To be honest, I only can laugh about that, but probably because I'm way beyond that. I mean, it sounds stupid, but 10 years ago, I had the same mindset in a certain way, but now I'm woke.
Most of us did.
That's true. That's true, but the time is running out. Let's just assume that there are now billions viewers on the channel, which will never happen. Would be there any advice that you would give to men?
Oh, God, other than wake up. Of course, if I had billions of viewers, the best advice I could give men is to go to the link below and get my book, Men-Women Relationships, because it is a great expansive examination of this. You've asked really good. It's an expansive examination of the very things we've been talking about in a little bit, longer format with a lot more information in it. But in what the ultimate advice would be there would be to wake up, to recognize that you're worth more than to be just another disposable unit to be used for women's service and pleasure, that you deserve fair treatment under the law, that you deserve fair treatment by society, and that it's okay to speak your mind even if women don't approve. And it's especially important to do that if you're ever going to have a real awareness of who you are. You've got to be able to speak when people disapprove of it. That's all I can say.
I only can agree on that point, to be honest. And I think those are some nice last words. If some viewers are now curious, where can they read more about you?
They can go to paulelam.com. You will find a video library there of my top videos, the ones that have been viewed most on YouTube. They're very select information. There's some articles there. You can also schedule time for consultation, which I provide professionally. You can also go and read articles there. And you can go to An Ear for Men on YouTube and watch videos there.
I will put everything in the video description, so they can't miss you if they somehow curious or if they want to find out more. With that said, time is running out. I appreciate your time, Paul.
I've enjoyed the chat. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. I guess maybe in 2 months, something like that.
Sure.
I mean, I only wrote down like 15 questions, and we're still not through those questions, and we're still at the surface of everything. So we can go much
We can
deeper.
come back and do this again for sure.
Glad to hear. Then I would say thank you, Paul. Have a nice evening or day. I don't know what is the time there.
It's daytime, middle of the afternoon. I know it's getting later for you. But anyway, you guys take care.
Take care. Bye.